I remember praying to God one night saying, God, I'm just in way too many situations to where there's no way out. And if you are really there, then would you just remove me from this life? Well, life kept on. I woke up the next morning and I kept on living. And I came to spring break of my senior year. And by this time, I had just been feeling really fatigued, really tired. I had been catching all these different infections and just been really, my body as a whole was really weak. And, but spring break was here, my senior year, and my mom and I had planned my whole life that we were going to go to New York City. I woke up that morning and I had never felt that bad, but I was determined to go. And I got on the flight and we arrived in New York City, and that first night was an absolute blast. But soon thereafter, I started to go downhill pretty quickly. And one morning I woke up and I couldn't get out of bed. And my mom called my dad, and he was in Dallas on a business trip, but he flew up. And so that evening, we went to the emergency room, and I remember them running all these tests and giving me blood transfusions, and it was just a lot of uncertainty. And the next morning, March 10th, 2005, I was sitting in my hospital room with my dad, and my mom was outside in the hall on the phone with my aunts, giving them updates of my condition. And this doctor came into the room, and he looked at me and he said, Lauren, this disease you have is called leukemia. And as soon as I was in that room by myself, I just took a deep breath and I looked out that window and I was just so at peace. And I just said, God, thank you. Thank you so much. I know that you are real and I know that you are present in this situation. So I was air ambulanced to MD Anderson, and I met with my leukemia doctor there, and he gave me my official diagnosis, which was ALL, which is acute lymphoblastic leukemia. And I signed some papers and I got admitted for my first treatment. And I remember sitting in that hospital room with my family, and the nurse came in and hung the first pre-chemo drug, which is a type of a steroid. And soon thereafter, I started feeling like really tingly and in my fingers, and then it moved to like all my extremities, and I just was going really numb. And the next thing I know, some code is being called over the intercom, and I'm being rushed down to the ICU. And sure enough, I was in cardiac arrest and kidney failure. And I don't really remember too terribly much about that, but I remember waking up in the ICU and turning over and seeing my friend Rebecca. And Rebecca was a childhood friend that I've known my whole life. And actually, the previous year, she had been diagnosed with a rare tumor cancer, but she was in remission, and her hair was growing back, and she was sitting across the room, and she was smiling, and she was like, Lauren, I'm praying for you, and everything is going to be just fine. So my treatment just continued on, went pretty smoothly. Then in June, I was back in the hospital with extremely bad headaches. And they went ahead and administered my chemo round while they tried to figure out what was causing these headaches. Well, as the days continued and my headaches got worse and worse, my vision started to fail as well. And by the time they figured out what the problem was, I lost my eyesight pretty much completely and my hearing in my left ear. And they did an emergency brain surgery, and they removed the pressure that was building on my brain. They told me that I would regain my eyesight, and it was just a healing process. When I was back in the hospital again with pancreatitis, my doctor came to the decision that he was going to stop my chemo. He told me that at this point, the chemo would kill me and not the cancer. And he told me that it would just be a better decision to go ahead and stop it, even though I had only had 5 of my 8 chemo rounds. He told me to prepare myself for a bone marrow transplant because there's no doubt that I would relapse. I remember soon after I ended my chemo, I went to an ophthalmology appointment with my doctor at MD Anderson. And I had been through many tests with her, but she finally set me down and she told me that my eyesight was never going to recover any more than it already had. And she declared me legally blind, and she told me that I was never going to be able to drive again. And that was one of the hardest appointments that I've dealt with throughout my entire cancer experience, because it was just so permanent. And so, but I decided to trust in God and know that He was going to be faithful because He hadn't failed me yet. And over the next few months, I attended 3 funerals of 3 very precious children that I had met while I was receiving treatment at MD Anderson. And I was just left kind of confused, and it was just all very surreal. And then in February, my mom had set me down and she told me that Rebecca too had gone home to be with the Lord. And I just remember being completely shocked and more confused than I ever had been, because I was left wondering why I was still here when I was the one that was praying for death. But I just knew that God had a plan, and I knew that I was alive for a reason. And so I just was deciding to just live every day for Him. And this past January, on my birthday, I had an appointment down at MD Anderson for a checkup. And I met with my leukemia doctor, and he told me that all my blood work and all my tests came back clear. And the same doctor who looked at me and told me that I was going to relapse looked at me and told me that he didn't think I would ever have another problem with leukemia and that he never needs to see me again. And that was probably the best birthday present I could ask for. And it was a great start to a new year. And I just continue living each and every day knowing that there is a reason why I'm still alive, and that He does have a plan for my life, and that's to glorify Him and to shine for Him. And throughout my life, God has proven to be healer in so many ways, and He has healed me from a past of brokenness and shame, but He's also healed me from cancer. So yes, I am a survivor, but I'm also a conqueror in Christ.